Everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. I have an update on two of Trump's capital terrorists. It's time for an episode of Where Are They Now?
Matthew Bledsoe was arrested.
Patrick Montgomery was in court.
Jonathan Manapa will stay in federal custody.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
So the friends who insurrection together do time together. Friends and insurrection buddies, Ronald Sandlin and Nathaniel DeGrave, he goes by Nate DeGrave, have been hit with new and very serious charges. But before I jump into what those charges are, let me refresh your memory about what they did at the Capitol. Sandlin is a 34-year-old man from Tennessee who was arrested on January 28th, and he was later indicted on some already very serious charges that included assaulting officers, obstruction of an official proceeding, and so forth. So he was already facing potentially decades in prison and some really incredibly steep financial penalties and fees, which he definitely cannot afford, as you guys are going to hear. And Sandlin, like so many of these other people that have been arrested, he documented not just his actions, but even his intentions, and as well as his alleged crimes on social media. So, for example, on December 23rd, he posted the following. This was on Facebook. He said, quote, "Who is going to Washington, D.C. on the 6th of January? I'm going to be there to show support for our president and to do my part to stop the steal and stand behind Trump when he decides to cross the Rubicon." Then during the attack, Sandlin was posting videos of himself in the Capitol. He posted videos of himself smoking weed. He said, I'm smoking weed. He said things like, quote, "We did it. We breached the building and the Capitol." He also said things like, quote, "We occupied and for the most part left that place relatively put together, all things considered." And surveillance video showed Sandlin wrestling with and shoving officers when they were trying to shut and lock doors, interior doors, into the Senate. And he was part of a group that you would probably recall if you saw it, that they were on video physically posturing toward these same officers and then yelling at them aggressively when the officers walked away. And they walked away because they were outnumbered, like 30-2 or 30-3. It was not a fair fight. But after his arrest, Sandlin seemed to recognize the errors of his ways. He told the judge that he was, quote, "done with politics," and that he felt ashamed. That was another direct quote. He was ashamed of his actions. Well, that seems to be a bunch of BS, because Sandlin then, shortly after that, tried to sell his January 6th video footage to a documentary filmmaker. And then in text messages from jail, because he's been in jail since his arrest, Sandlin told his family members, quote, "I'm in a cell block with all Capitol people. I'm proud to call them my friends. We stood up for what we believed in and sacrificed. I'm writing a book on my journey, and I hope to turn it into a movie. I plan on having Leonardo DiCaprio play me. I have many stories to tell. We made history that day, and the full implications of our actions are yet to be realized. Josiah ratted/lied on me to save his own ass." Now, the Josiah to whom Sandlin is referring is a man named Josiah Colt. And he's an acquaintance of both Sandlin and DeGrave. And he accepted a plea deal back in July for his January 6 charges. And Sandlin also texted another Capitol terrorist named Nick Alvear, and he suggested that they work together on a book and a screenplay that Sandlin is allegedly writing about January 6th. So, like I said, Sandlin's been sitting in jail since his arrest, and the reason being is that the judge thinks that he's a flight risk. And this is due to the fact that he owes $500,000 in back taxes. So, like I said, he cannot afford penalties and fees from this whole thing. In addition to that, his birth mother resides in Mexico. So he could just take off. And Sandlin's friend and his alleged co-conspirator, who I mentioned, Nate DeGrave, he's another piece of work. DeGrave is a 32-year-old man from Nevada. He was also arrested January 28th, and Sandlin, and that one other man, their other friend, Josiah Colt, traveled to DC and entered the Capitol together on January 6th. Wait till you hear about this guy. Where to begin with DeGrave? DeGrave has a photo of Trump hanging on the wall in his apartment, and he refers to him as his idol. And this guy is notorious for posting completely thirsty, shirtless photos of himself on social media. He also posts pictures of himself standing in front of his sports car. Does that work with women? Who are they? Anyway, DeGrave actually calls himself the King of Las Vegas. That's his direct quote. And he considers himself to be a life and success hacker. In fact, just 5 days before the Capitol attack, he posted, quote, "Who's ready to absolutely fucking crush it this year?" I mean, if by finding success and crushing it, he means like taking part in a violent domestic terrorist attack at our nation's capital, ending up in jail for 9 months and counting, likely spending tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal fees. Yeah, then you are, Nathan, you are crushing it. You're crushing it, big league guy. Anyway, on January 6th, DeGrave showed up looking like he was ready for battle. He was seen in photos and video dressed in full tactical gear. He had a vest, a helmet, a gas mask. And like Sandlin, DeGrave was allegedly seen on video wrestling and shoving the officers and then posturing as they walked away. So he was part of that same group. They were just standing a few feet away from each other. There's actually security camera footage showing DeGrave holding up his fists in a posture like he was going to fight this officer. And then when the officer walked away, he starts beating his chest. And just so you know, if you haven't seen it, it's pretty hysterical because the officer could so easily have taken him. He's like 2 or 3 times his size. So he had also already been indicted, also on very serious charges that could land him in prison for several decades. And he has also been in custody since his arrest in January. So, you know, I guess he's now the king of cell block 8 or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, incarceration success and prison hacks. I don't know, just doesn't have the same ring to it. Anyway, now both Sandlin and DeGrave have been hit with a superseding indictment that includes a charge of conspiracy. So according to court documents, as early as December of 2020, both Sandlin and DeGrave planned in advance to stop the certification of the Electoral College votes, and they planned for violence. According to the indictment, on December 30th, in a private Facebook message, Sandlin wrote to DeGrave and said, quote, "Yo, sorry, bro, I'm going back and forth about going. Some people I respect are saying it may get dangerous. Are you down for danger, bro?" Bro, danger, bro. Anyway, DeGrave replied, quote, "I'm bringing bulletproof clothing, and yes." Then on December 31st, DeGrave wrote on Facebook that he was looking for someone who can, quote, "shoot and has excellent aim and can teach me today or tomorrow." Then he added, quote, "I want somebody special forces or ex-FBI to teach me. I want personalized training from the best. And, quote, I'm open to learning all of the essential skills, whatever is necessary to survive." So someone actually responded to this with a recommendation and mentioned that this person wasn't cheap. And DeGrave replied to that person and said, quote, "This is for a very patriotic cause." And then in addition, Sandlin also posted on Facebook on December 31st, talking about how he and DeGrave and Colt were going to travel to DC on the 6th, and he asked for donations to help fund their activities. And he said in exchange, he would give people a personal thank you video, and he would record it on site in DC. And then along with that request, he posted a link to a GoFundMe page. And he said it was for, quote, Patriots Defending Our Country on January 6th, organized by Ronnie Sandlin. And then on that GoFundMe page, there was an edited image. And so what Sandlin did was he superimposed, or somebody superimposed Sandlin's head onto the body of a man who was sitting in a car holding what the FBI said looked like a gold-plated semi-automatic rifle. So on the same day, all this other posting is going on, Sandlin, DeGrave, and Colt were privately messaging each other on Facebook. And they were discussing plans to ship guns to Sandlin's home, which is where they met up, and then they traveled to DC together. Colt also was saying in these messages that he was going to bring his G43 on the plane with him, which the FBI says is a reference to his Glock. And he told Sandlin that approximately $300 worth of stuff had been ordered, that was a direct quote, worth of stuff, that it had been ordered, and he had sent it to Sandlin's home, including a Glock holster, gas mask, and a helmet. And Sandlin said that he was bringing his, quote, little pocket gun and a knife to DC. And then on January 4th, DeGrave sent the other two a screenshot of this wildprotest.com. So it was a website that was set up specifically for January 6th. And he also sent them a post from Parler that included the hashtags, quote, do not certify January 6th, stop the steal caravan, dark to light, and the great awakening. Oh, and also drain the swamp. And he sent that along with his own comment, which read, quote, let them try us. Sandlin also posted a photo of Colt lying in bed, and he was holding a weapon. And he wrote, quote, Patriot Josiah Colt sleeping ready for the Boogaloo January 6th. What the Boogaloo has to do with that, I don't know. But anyway, Colt replied and said, quote, ready for any battle. And according to the indictment, these three traveled to DC with paramilitary gear, a Glock 43, an M&P bodyguard pocket pistol, 2 magazines of ammunition, knives, a handheld taser, an expandable baton, walkie-talkies, and bear spray. Kind of sounds like they were planning for violence. Anyway, the document also states that once they reached the hotel, you're not going to believe this, they not only had a discussion about weapons and violence, these three stable geniuses actually recorded their conversation. And then they shared it on social media. In it, Colt said that they had been debating on whether or not to carry guns because they knew that it was a felony in DC. They actually said the word felony, so they knew it was wrong. And DeGrave said, quote, for the camera's sake, we're not going to carry. And then Colt repeated that sentence. Then later in the day, but prior to the attack at the Capitol, they live streamed another video in which Sandlin was imploring, quote, fellow patriots to watch the video. And then during the live stream, this is according to prosecutors, Sandlin stated 4 separate times that, quote, freedom is paid for with blood. And then he said, quote, there is going to be violence. Then he told the viewers, quote, if you are watching this and you are a patriot and are here, I think it is time to take the Capitol. God, kind of sounds like a plan, kind of sounds like a pre-planned thing. He also said that he wanted to, quote, urge other patriots to take the Capitol. And then DeGrave made comments about defending the country, fighting Antifa, blah, blah, blah. And then Colt said, quote, they can't just steal an election. And DeGrave said, quote, we are sick and tired of the fucking lies. It is time to put an end to this once and for all. And then later on in the video, Sandlin allegedly said, quote, we are going to be there back by 1 o'clock when it is action time. It is game time. And then Colton asks, quote, storming the Capitol? And then Sandlin replies, quote, I'm willing to occupy the Capitol. So court documents state that the three men went to the Capitol. They were wearing masks, helmets, shin guards, and body armor, and that they were carrying 2 knives and walkie-talkies. So it sounds like, at least according to the prosecutors, they didn't bring their guns, but they did carry knives. And then as they approached the Capitol, again, DeGrave is filming their actions and he's yelling out, quote, they just breached the Capitol building. That's it, bro. It's game time. We armored up. We got gas masks. This is what separates us true patriots from everyone else who's all talk, you know, fuck this, fuck that, sitting at home. We out here taking action. It's Dr. Death in the building and it's about to go down. These guys are so stupid. Anyway, Colt and Sandlin were also heard in the same video, and Colt kept repeatedly yelling, quote, breach the building and fuck the GOP. And then Sandlin was yelling, quote, if you're not breaching the building, get out of the way. And the other thing he was yelling was, the time for talk is over. The indictment also alleges that Sandlin and DeGrave were part of a group that pushed officers after they entered the building, and then they forced a door open, which was how others were allowed inside the building. Yeah, it wasn't cops who opened the door that's locked from the inside. So while this was all going on, DeGrave allegedly was yelling, quote, get the fuck through and kick the fuck open. Okay. And then during this melee, prosecutors say that that's when Sandlin allegedly tried to rip the helmet off of one of the officers. But immediately after all that went on, they all three went upstairs. And then Colt apparently repeatedly suggested that they, quote, go to the Senate where they're meeting. And then when they got there, that's where DeGrave and Sandlin allegedly assaulted those officers, which there is surveillance video of that happening, of this pushing and shoving and so forth, and DeGrave holding up his fists. So the complaint states that Sandlin and DeGrave tried to wrestle past the officers as they were locking those doors, and prosecutors say that Sandlin actually struck one of the officers in the back of the head near his ear. Now, eventually, prosecutors say that the three men made it into the Senate chamber. They were in the Senate gallery, which is up above the Senate floor. And then you may recall their friend Josiah Colt is the guy who was seen hanging off of the Senate balcony. And then he dropped down from there. But there's photos, there's videos of him doing that. So DeGrave, while this was going on, while his friend was, dropping down to the floor, he's shouting at Colt and to others, quote, take laptops, paperwork, take everything. And then prosecutors are saying that prior to exiting the building, Sandlin is also accused of stealing a book that had photos of the former presidents on the cover. And he allegedly swiped that book from someone's office. They didn't say if it was a senator. They didn't say where. So here's where these charges stand for these geniuses. Like I said, Sandlin and DeGrave have now been indicted, and they have been indicted for conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstructing an official proceeding, and aiding and abetting in that crime. 6 counts of assaulting, resisting, or impeding officers, as well as aiding and abetting in those crimes. 2 counts of civil disorder, aiding and abetting in those crimes, entering a restricted building or grounds, and then 1 count of disorderly conduct in a restricted building or grounds. And the assault charges they come with increased penalties because they involved physical contact with the officers, and also the assaults occurred while they were allegedly committing another felony. So these guys are hosed. because, like I said, their alleged co-conspirator has taken a plea deal. He's now working with the prosecutors. He will likely testify against them in court. And speaking of court, both Sandlin and DeGrave have pleaded not guilty to all of these counts, and they have a status conference actually scheduled for October 21st. Now, Sandlin actually has a trial date on the books. His trial is scheduled for December 9th at 9 a.m. Eastern time. So I'm not sure if they've refused a plea agreement. I don't know if they've been even offered a plea agreement. I mean, maybe because they already have a confession and a cooperation agreement from their alleged co-conspirator, Josiah Colt. Maybe they don't believe that they need to make a deal with these two. I don't know. I haven't seen any reporting on any of that, but I'll keep you guys posted. I mean, these guys may have said, no, we're not going to take a plea. That is totally possible. Maybe they want to go to a jury trial. So we'll see. I'll let you guys know when I hear more. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Take care. I'll talk with you soon.